Please tell me it's working this time. The force is not strong. No, it's maybe it's Star Trek's fault. What happened? I just tuned in and it was like a terrible noise, like a cat being strangled. That's all I could see was a hamster death wheel of doom spinning around. That was me singing, unfortunately. Max's singing is is to the internet what Truss is to the Lake Queen. I blame Obama. So we're back. Finally, we're back. Okay, it seems everyone is jumping on board. Apologies for that. I don't know if it's YouTube's fault, my fault, the software I use's fault. I don't know whose fault. Maybe it's my singing. So next time somebody has a birthday, do not tell me about it. Otherwise, I'll have to sing, and then we saw the consequences of that. Hi, Sarah, and happy birthday, Brad, once again. But I won't sing it. Okay. Yeah, definitely singing. Okay, so we're going to cover a few stories tonight. Of course, the milkshake, not in relation to Nigel Farage, but a milkshake tax is probably in the budget tomorrow, and a few other stories. Also, Wes Streeting's constituency, people in his constituency are interviewed, and we get their opinions. But first of all, this story here. Nigel Farage dismisses school racism claim as banter in the playground. You know, what sort of banter do you engage in as a kid? You know, when I was a kid, the sort of banter I'd engage in is, you know, maybe calling somebody names, or they would call me names, and the names would be things like, you know, you look, I don't know, poopy head or something like that. I don't even remember some of the names. Or we'd have names for people, but they'd be cute names. They wouldn't really be insulting names. But for some reason, you know, Nigel Farage, when he was a kid, he was engaging in, you know, the type of banter he was engaging in was the stuff you'd read in, I don't know, Mein Kampf or something like that. So anyway, Reform UK leader says there was a strong political element to accusations he racially abused fellow pupils while he was at Dulwich College in South London. The Reform UK leader said that he had never been part of an extremist organisation or engaged in direct unpleasant personal abuse, but added, can I remember everything that happened at school? No, I can't. Speaking to reporters on Monday, Mr. Farage said that there was a strong political element to the accusations, which were first published in The Guardian newspaper. The newspaper reported that the former UKIP leader allegedly made racist and anti-Semitic comments while he was a pupil at Dulwich College, an independent school in South London. But asked whether he racially abused fellow pupils when he was at the school, Mr. Farage said no. That was 49 years ago. By the way, 49 years ago. Have I ever tried to take it out on any individual on the basis of where they're from? No. So is this something that we actually thought about, Nigel? Of course, there's no smoke without fire, and we know where Farage comes from. We've heard. I'm not actually concerned about his rhetoric in the past. I'm concerned about his rhetoric today, and this is much more concerning because he'll say, "Look, I was a kid, and I was doing stupid things, and we all do stupid things when we're kids. We all engage in racist banter or something like that." Maybe that's what he's trying to suggest, but I'm more concerned about what he's doing now and his rhetoric today. Him asking questions about individuals who may be involved in crimes, and then obviously the people who support him going out and trying to burn down asylum centers. Him parroting rhetoric from the likes of Andrew Tate, him and his close relationship with Donald Trump and maybe even Vladimir Putin. That is more concerning than what he said in the past. Now, Farage would present this as some sort of political hit job. The Labour are losing in the polls and the media are after me. They're trying to turn me into some sort of demon. And I don't think it's going to make any difference because, as I keep saying, the Farage riots as well said Mandy. I keep saying the vote will be based on whether Labour are doing a good job or not, whether people's lives are better. And if people don't feel that their lives are getting any better, they'll vote for the likes of Nigel Farage, in the same way people voted for Donald Trump because they didn't think that their lives were getting better in the US. Breaking news, the Pope says he's not a Catholic. Thanks, Peter. Yes. Oh my goodness, I'm shocked. I do believe people change, but I don't believe people who downplay these things ever move past basic name calling by that kind of age anyway. You know, one thing is to say, look, I said some stupid things in the past and I'm sorry for that, and you know, I've changed. But Nigel Farage has not changed. Nigel Farage is doing exactly the sort of, maybe the target has changed, but the approach has not. So he's not a Catholic yet. Talk about Reform Badge with the numbers 18 and 20, Max. Both have connotations to Hitler. Yes, 18 being Adolf Hitler. 20, I'm not familiar with that. But because Reform were formed in 2018, they can deflect. Look, we all know what they stand for. And I think the media or us approaching this as Nigel Farage is a Nazi or Reform UK are Nazis, they're not. They're actually fascists, and I think that's more relevant, because if you and I mentioned this in a video as well, if you call Nigel Farage a Nazi or the Reform UK party Nazis, well, they will just say, well, you know, we're not dressed in uniforms yet, we don't have armbands yet, we're not talking about throwing people in camps and stuff like that yet, but what they actually represent is fascist. You know, Nigel Farage is not on the side of free speech. He claims to be, and when it's going in his direction, yes, of course, he will support people agreeing with him. But as soon as you start disagreeing with him, then he shuts it down. You know, there are certain media outlets which are banned from reporting at events, Reform UK events. Journalists have been banned in some cases. That's not freedom of expression. That's not somebody who embraces freedom of speech. And you have Farage and his cohort, his band of merry guys, complaining about any sort of criticism. We had the chairman of the Conservative Party posting a link to the Nazi Party's a Wikipedia page on the Nazi Party, linking it to Farage and Reform, and Nigel Farage blew a gasket, as opposed to going, well, you know, I don't agree with that, but it's his right to express that. No, Reform UK had a mini meltdown over it. You know, the same people who claimed that, well, you know, if somebody just tweeted something, they shouldn't go to jail over it, when in reality it wasn't about a tweet, it was about causing a disturbance or inciting violence. Does the National Front wear Hugo Boss suits? I don't think they can afford them. That's the problem for the National Front. Nigel Farage certainly can. Max, just so you know, Nigel had a friend who was black, so just so you know. Yes. Look, that's why I think Farage doesn't care so much about, it's about the money. It's not about your skin color today. It's about the money. He doesn't care if you're Muslim, he doesn't care if you're Arab, he doesn't care where you're from, what the skin color you are. As long as you're bringing money to him, he's happy about that. What he says behind closed doors, that would be interesting. What he says in his house, that would be interesting. Because I think it would be somewhat different to, you know, I don't think he speaks probably as kindly about Zia Youssef behind his back as he does to his face. Anyway, guys, let's move on. So our next story. I just wanted to cover this quickly because this is Bernie Sanders and the so-called godfather of AI talking about AI replacing people's jobs. And I think this is really important.
Mr. Musk says
And it's
that
very
last
low.
month
Why is it so
AI
low?
and robots will replace all jobs. Working will be optional. Bill Gates, also involved in AI, predicted that humans, quote, won't be needed for most
Oh my goodness, I'm sorry, the audio is terrible on this.
things, end quote. Dario Amodei, the CEO of Anthropic, warned that AI could lead.
Okay, I leave this because when I first listened to it, it seemed to be okay, but now the audio is absolutely terrible. Instead, we'll go to this, which should be a little bit better. So this is a similar story. It's about jobs being replaced by AI. And I think this, what we're going to hear in the budget tomorrow is about how more and more people need to be working, more and more people need to be off benefits and into jobs. And I keep asking the question, what jobs?
Well, nearly. The Geely Zeekr factory in Ningbo is highly automated. One of the high-performance electric vehicles produced here, the Polestar 4, is destined for the streets of Britain. Human beings are still needed to monitor production. But whereas in the past a factory this size would need up to 5,000 workers, this one employs just 1,400. It's pretty impressive watching all these machines doing their own thing. But I keep thinking about the people who would have been working here if it weren't for automation. There's already a big unemployment problem in China. What the government's hoping is that a high-tech injection of AI is somehow going to solve both the economic and the social problems that's creating.
A UBI, you need a UBI, or you need some sort of universal basic services being provided to people. What's going to happen, guys, is, and this is so crazy, that this issue is not getting a lot of traction, and it's going to fundamentally change society. We're talking about companies at the moment we are cooked, yes. We're talking about companies who are freezing employment. Now, they're not sacking a load of people yet, but what they're doing is they're freezing employment. They're not taking on a lot of junior workers. A lot of the junior workers are necessary. It's necessary for those junior workers to gain some employment and build up experience and build up a career. That's been frozen at the moment. A lot of young people are not being employed. And at the same time, we have government telling people, you need to go out and get a job. You need to work. You can't be on benefits. And we keep hearing more and more stories from, especially on the right, about how, the welfare budget is too big and the government need to do something. They need to force people off benefits. They need to make sure that people who are claiming any sort of support need to be encouraged, more stick than carrot, into the job market. But what job market? This is a problem. This is happening now in China, where they're at the front end when it comes to AI, when it comes to robotics and machines.
Liangzhu, a suburb of scenic Hangzhou, is the home of DeepSeek, China's game-changing open-source AI company. It's become a magnet for Gen Z graduates trying to find themselves in this new economy. Some gather at the E-Moment Cafe. Unlike their parents, this generation doesn't have to worry about survival. So they're rejecting China's relentless culture of toil.
In China, we don't have the time to relax. Many Chinese students, for example me, I graduated from the Fudan University, a very top university in China. But we just, after graduate, I work.
Depression is an issue. Some drop out, tang ping, lie flat as it's called.
Some people said they want to 躺平. It's because they want to escape, and they don't want to face it. Because if you face it, it will take risk, and it will also like a depression or like not happy.
Our individual thinking.
So what's the answer?
This is my second me.
An AI-enabled app, of course.
Hi there, I'm
It's like jobs are being lost to AI, so let's make more apps with AI or AI apps. Brad, thanks so much for that super chat. As we get AI, Jacob Rees-Mogg gets his first calculator. It's one with the big chunky buttons and that prints out on paper. Yeah, he's like 100 years behind. If you look at some of the videos, I might actually have a video with Jacob Rees-Mogg coming up maybe tomorrow or the next day. and it's like he's living in a museum. It's like somebody got in a time machine, went back 200 years, and that's what his house is like. It's not like he's into vintage. He is vintage.
Oh, we're building a product called Second Me, which essentially aims to help people create their digital identity using AI. I enjoy traveling, savoring good food, and contemplating philosophical questions to maintain inner peace.
And my second me can, for example, mesh or mingle with Chris' second me, and
Yes.
we would find common ideas.
Okay. Felix.
My goodness. Do you understand what this app does? It creates a copy of you, and you have a friend or you have a colleague, and they have a copy of them. And instead of you actually meeting with your friend, your digital copy will meet and have a chat. It's like people are just going to end up not interacting with each other at all.
Lau demonstrates his new AI social network app, in which you create a digital twin to connect with kindred digital souls. He and his friends meet to discuss ideas, just as he used to do when he lived in Silicon Valley.
When we come back to Hangzhou, we just feel like there's a younger generation of Chinese people, and there is AI wave, which actually enables everyone to build and create way more efficient, and makes everyone way more powerful than ever before. So we just want to have a gathering like Silicon Valley vibe here.
Silicon Valley has a reputation for being very male-dominated. What about here?
I think people here don't like to put a lot of label on the real person. They focus more on what the person do or what the person make, rather than who the person is. You can now more.
And she's probably right. Yeah. So there's more focus on what you can do than who you are. Kirsty says, we all know that Max is a secret weapon in the fight against AI. With his birthday song, we will still have jobs. Yes, all I have to do is sing, and this will fight the machines. You know, the Skynet has nothing against me. I'll be just standing on a hilltop singing, and then the machines will all drop dead, like in The Matrix. If Jacob Rees-Mogg didn't exist, then Chris Morris, Reeves, and Mortimer or Harry Enfield would have invented him. Yes, he's something else.
More about your
Their consumer behavior, what they've bought. Maybe Alan's AI app to connect producers and potential consumers will become a successful startup, like Hangzhou's Little Dragons that have become famous across China. To wake up the AI assistant, please say, "Hi, Rocket." Hi, Rocket. One little dragon, Rocket, is making AI-enabled glasses.
This is one of my collection.
The CEO loves his collection of old computers.
This is my computer when I was in junior high school.
Was it? He's another tech entrepreneur who returned to China from the US and has subsequently received government backing.
You make sure the AI is always on and always be with you. So the glasses is naturally on your face. So that's the best platform for the AI. The things that surprised me that there are many people using our product in
Africa. The map shows where people are using the glasses, but going global might be difficult.
Sorry for the audio. It seems my audio is too low and the video audio is too high. So hopefully this is a bit better now. We're ending up in a situation where people are creating these apps, and at the same time, you know, it's making life easier in some ways, but it's taking jobs away from people in others. And it's really concerning because we're moving away from a focus on improving people's lives by improving their experience in working. And instead it seems to be outsourcing more of the work to machines while not having a B plan. I'm really concerned that there isn't a B plan on the table here. We're instead, all we hear from government is, yeah, people need to work. More and more people need to get off their arses and they get into jobs. People need to be forced off benefits or entitlements, as they call them, which they should be rightly called, and get into jobs, when we keep hearing about how AI is replacing people.
Especially in the US, where a company with Chinese government support would be seen as suspect. Glasses? That's James Bond. How are you going to convince them that you're not a Chinese James Bond spying on people?
Oh, that's complicated. So, for example, some country like in the UK, you have to leave the data. You cannot touch the user privacy stuff. So we just follow that laws. The fundamental stuff, the algorithm, the hardware, I think we are totally open to the global.
The government is putting a lot of emphasis on this, isn't it? I mean, when you talk about the 5-year plan.
The Chinese government just announced we are going to open more and more scenarios for the AI technology. So I think, I think in China, the AI technology are so popular and the people love the AI technology.
It's, while we in the West are afraid of this, in China they're embracing it. And we're starting to see a lot of the industry that was producing the technology of the past and also the present moving into this as well. So we're going to start to see robots appear as well. And they're, of course, going to do the jobs of people. Okay, guys, I want to move on to another story here. What's happening with child benefits? So it seems the 2-child benefit cap is going to be lifted in the budget. It's interesting because the budget, before we get to Julia Hartless-Brewer, when it comes to the budget, this is probably the most leaked budget in history. And Julia, what's his name? Lindsay Hoyle will not be too happy about this at the in the House of Commons tomorrow when the budget is eventually delivered. Now, I just want to say something about the budget before we get into it. I think there's going to be a real problem with so much detail. There was a talk about in the past how the budgets were quite simple, easy to follow. Okay, we're increasing this tax or we're taking this thing away. And instead, what we're going to see more and more complex budgets where people bring back Bercow, exactly. Yes, I fully support that. But I think we're starting to see in these new budgets that everything, instead of increasing taxes in one way or increasing, income tax, the chancellor is forced to increase taxes increase costs in all sorts of different areas, and this makes it more complex. But it also, it allows the government to distract the public in a way from massive tax hikes. It's also able to. It also creates the problem that you end up having a lot of little groups affected. I think it was Times Radio was talking about this, and they said, the yo-yo lobby. If you put a tax on yo-yos, the yo-yo lobby would come out and complain about it. So everyone is. The more complex it is, the more people that will come out and complain about it. But maybe that's the only way the government can achieve it without increasing something like income tax, because they promised not to increase income tax. Boris Johnson will be millions of pounds richer. Yes. Thanks for that, Brad. Careful with AI. A friend tried to create the ultimate sandwich with it. It suggested Andrea Jenkins and Nadine Dorris, with him as the failing. Was his name Boris Johnson by any chance? Thanks, Freckle Bunny. A sloppy Joe. Oh my goodness. No wealth tax, so fuck it. No, I don't think there's going to be a wealth tax in this. But anyway, let's jump to the 2-child benefit cap, and this is something that's going to really upset people because Andrea Jenkins, but Julia Hartless-Brewer is talking about it.
You think the public's going to change their mind about someone who says I'm a bit anxious on a Monday from being allowed to not work for the rest of their life, or that they're going to change their mind on the 2-child benefit cap? Because the public, including Labour voters...
So this is what I hate about her. She's not interested in facts. She's not interested in reality. What she does is she takes her opinion and then spins it as this is the reality. That people will, I feel a bit queasy today, so I'm not going to go to work. In many cases, if people don't work, they don't get paid. But in other cases, people don't have proper sick sickness support. People are going to work even if they are sick. People are avoiding going to the doctor because they know that they may end up having to pay for a prescription to get treated or something like that. So many people will refuse to go to the doctor, refuse to look after themselves. And if people don't get the treatment they need at the beginning, I've mentioned before, conditions become chronic. Anyway.
There's more than half of Labour voters even don't want the two-child benefit cap scrapped. Why? Because they know perfectly well the families in their own street who are taking the mick.
So how is somebody taking the mick? You notice it's always they believe like the focus is on the parents, not on the children. Who would benefit from lifting the two-child benefit cap? The media unfortunately focus on the parents, the right-wing media, but if you listen to charities, they will say it will lift 300,000 children out of poverty. 300,000 if you remove the two-child benefit cap. The focus should be on the children. But what you hear from commentators on the right is, no, we need to punish these people for having kids. And these are the same people who will say, hey, look, the population is decreasing. We need to have more children. So they want people to have children, but then at the same time, they don't want people to have children that they have to pay for. So who is going to have all these children? Just rich people. That's what it seems to be what the far right in particular want. We don't want poor people to have children because we might end up having to pay for them or support them in some way. We only want very rich people to have children. But the problem is for people like Julie Hartless-Brewer is that rich people generally don't have a lot of children or have children at all.
I think there are some policies a government should do even when they're unpopular.
Sorry, Kirsty says, thanks so much, Kirsty, for that super chat. It's okay. They'll U-turn on the budget soon. There have been so many U-turns. It's like a driving test.
I'm sure you would agree on that. I actually think that two-child benefit cap is one of them.
Why?
I think it's a small amount of money and it would take 300,000 children a year out of poverty.
No, there are plenty of other ways of taking those children out of poverty.
So, there are other ways to take those children out of poverty. So is the focus on the children in poverty, or this way is like, why should she care as long as the children are lifted out of poverty? If your focus is on the children, then wouldn't you want the best way to achieve this? And it's said, these are the charities are saying, if you remove this cap, you will lift these children out of poverty. Does Julia Hartley-Brewer have a better alternative? One that has been tested?
No, of course it's not the kids' fault. It's the parents' fault. You can take those kids out of poverty.
So why is it the parents' fault? Why does it have to be somebody's fault that they're in poverty? This is somebody who has supported austerity. She had no problem with austerity. What do you think the consequence of austerity is? I don't even need to say this to you guys. You already know. So many people are poor because of Tory policies, the ones that Julia Hartley-Brewer supports and supported. And now she's saying, well, we need to punish people who are poor. It's their fault. There's something wrong with you if you're poor. It's not your fault. Well, it is your fault in this. I'm saying it's not your fault, but for her, yes, it is your fault. There's some defect within you that results in you being poor. What do you think would happen to Julie Hartley-Brewer if she lost her voice tomorrow? She wasn't able to speak. What if she lost the use of her hands, so she wasn't able to write? What skill does she have that would be useful in society? Well, I don't think she actually has any useful skills, but for her to make money, what do you think would happen? She lost the ability to speak, so she can't comment on stuff, and she's not able to write articles for newspapers, for the Express or whoever she writes for. What do you think would happen to Julie Hartley-Brewer? She would become very poor very quickly. Maybe she would have Mike, concrete growing farmer, to give her some cash or something to help her out. But I don't know if he'd be willing to do that. But her funds would dry up pretty quickly and she would be poor, and then she would need to rely on the social safety net. The same social safety net that she wants to punch holes in.
About the parents getting a job. In most of those families, don't tell me they're working families, they're not. In most of those families,
the majority of those families have a working parent.
No, they have one parent working part-time at best. If you've...
And what's the problem with that?
got 3 or more kids and you're not both working, which is what most other families do, you're not doing your job as a parent, and you shouldn't be having more kids.
You know, so many people over the last number of years were told by society what you need to do. This is what you need to be as a successful, as an upstanding citizen in society. What you need to do is, when you're a kid, you're told by your parents, grandparents, you're told by society, you're told by the media, what you need to do is you need to go to university, you need to get a good job, you need to settle down, get married, buy a house, and then have a family. And many people did those things. And then what happened was there was a financial crisis where many people lost their jobs. Then we had austerity where more people were in dire straits. Now, those children, in many cases, were already born. Could you put them back? Well, you could try, but it would be extremely painful to all involved. So the children are here. So why would you describe, why is there always this, we need to punish people as opposed to lifting? Because she said there are other ways to lift them out of poverty. So I hope she's off the idea that you need to lift people out of poverty, especially children. She wants kids to starve and die, a child killer. Yes, that's what she seems to want. That's the impression I'm getting. Because she's not focusing on lifting, like she's not described any way of lifting people out of poverty apart from we need to punish people who are not working enough.
Two-parent family.
Remember, a lot of people are working they're working but not getting paid because they're carers, for example. And I've often said, a carer's job is much more important to society than my fucking job or Julia Hartley-Brewer's job. We're not adding anything to society. Our jobs on the scale are completely useless, are zero. I'm the first to say that. A carer, a nurse, a doctor, somebody who's working, providing for society. Maybe they're earning money, maybe they're not earning money. But that job is more valuable to society than a fucking political commentator. And this is me talking. Do you think for Julie Hartley-Brewer, her job is more important than somebody who's a carer?
If you're a single parent and you're working 24 hours
the majority
a week,
of them are actually two-parent families, because most of them are actually, a huge percentage of them are Bangladeshi and Pakistani heritage families, and they have very few single-parent families in them, as you know, because of the stigma of divorce in those communities. I've lots of friends who are single parents and family members. They've all worked.
I don't believe you have lots of friends. So first of all, there's the first lie of the night. She has lots of friends. And a lot of them are single parents. I don't believe that. I don't believe that Julie Hartley-Brewer has friends, first of all. Who would be friends with this individual? Like, can you imagine talking to her? Imagine talking about your problems. What do you think her response would be? I find that hard to believe.
Worked full time.
I think it's possible when you're on a higher income. It's very hard. No. It's hard if you don't have family.
My sister-in-law is a nurse.
It's not easy.
She's worked full time. She's worked full time throughout. Because she has to, because that's how you support. That's how families support themselves. I'm sorry, this is such a Hampstead, Islington, North London, noblesse.
I grew up in Halifax,
attitude.
Julia.
No, but that it's just this idea. Oh, these poor people. People making bad decisions about their families and about their own lives should not expect other people to pick up the tab.
What a wonderful individual, no? Why does she have anyone on her show? She does all the talking. Odious woman. Yes. Thanks so much, Kirsty. Yes. She does all the talking. If you look at any interview, if it's about 60% her talking and 40% the other person trying to get a word in edgeways. These people always have lots of friends. Yes. Jimmy, thanks so much, Jimmy. And thanks, Kirsty, for that. Oh, I actually was supposed to take a break, but we'll go through to the next video. This is quite interesting. I wonder what's your take on this, and then I'll give my take at the end.
There's a reason Britain feels broke, and it's probably not what you think. I'm going to explain, but first of all, you need to understand one thing. It's called debt to GDP ratio. Sounds boring, kind of is boring. but it's important. Basically means how much debt the government has compared to how rich the country is. When I was born in 1994, it was about 30%. In other words, for every pound the country made, the government owed 30p in debt. And it stayed that way until around about 2008, when the banks ran out of money and we had to bail them out. So then, debt jumps to 60%. Over the next 10 years of Tory government, it rises to about 80%. Then some guy eats a bat in Wuhan, and now nobody can go to work. So the government has to borrow even more money. And today, Britain's debt to GDP ratio is roughly 100%. But the weirdest thing is that's not even the main problem. Because in France, the debt to GDP ratio is 113%. In America, it's 120%. Japan's 240%. What's really mad is that Britain is paying more interest on its debt than any of these countries, because the people lending money to the government aren't just looking at the total amount of debt, but how quickly it's racking up. Think of it like this. Japan is your mate who's always in his overdraft. America's the guy who spends a lot but always shows up to work. Britain was the sensible one, but we've bought a dog, a new car, and a hair transplant all in 1 month. We've pretended that we've had a big pay increase, but in reality, we've just got a credit card with a lot of debt. So the people who loan the government money are starting to charge a lot more for it. We're now in the crazy position where 8% of all of the money the government spends is just servicing debt. That's more than double the entire defence budget. And if you're spending more servicing your debt than you are defending your country, that is not good. If you want to know what I think we should do about that, then follow me for part 2.
Okay, so on the surface, yes, Max, biscuits are Max's kryptonite. That's true. I have a weak spot for them. So when it comes to this debt, okay, there's a massive problem here with this video. He's sort of describing debt as the problem. What we need to do is we need to reduce debt because, well, you know, we can't live with it. We need to live within our means. But the problem here is that as they ignore the fact that we have our own bloody bank and sovereign currency. Yes, so you can't actually go bankrupt because you own the currency and you own and you're borrowing it from yourself, basically, from the Bank of England. But it's been described as, oh, this is a massive problem. Now, I've mentioned this before. When it comes to debt, the government need to have debt because it's money going into the economy. The government create debt in order to invest in society. So, for example, if you want to have infrastructure, you need to borrow money and build that infrastructure. And then what you're hoping with that is that you're going to get something in return. It's like I have a video on this, but maybe I don't know if it'll actually be. I don't know if I'll have a problem. Anyway, in the video I talked about how this is a bit like if you have a pastry shop or a baker's. You know, you have a small bakery or a small pastry shop and you serve to the public. And what you want to do is start doing deliveries. So what do? You buy a van. But in order to buy a van, you need to go to the bank and take out a loan. So you take out a loan and you buy a van. And this van is a cost and you have a debt now. And if you just look at the debt and you say, well, look, I have all these debts and I have this massive debt for a van. This is a problem. No, because the van is going to help you recoup the cost of that van. It's going to help you do deliveries where you can charge a premium. So this is going to help your business. Maybe you're going to hire some people to drive the van. And this is going to help you work even more. So you can work in the bakery or the pastry shop and you can have another person do the deliveries. So you can employ somebody and you can create a bit of prosperity for your business. But in order to achieve that, you need to get into debt. So debt on its own is not a negative thing. It's where the money goes that's the problem. And I've mentioned this before. A big problem with the UK economy is that a lot of the money is going into the private sector. Instead of actually going into the public sector, a lot of money is going into the private sector. So we see it in the NHS, we see it in housing, where in the past, councils would receive money for renting and they would reinvest that money in upgrading the infrastructure, upgrading the housing, maintaining them, making improvements. But now what's happening is a lot of the tenants who would normally be in council houses are now paying to private landlords, and those private landlords, well, that money is not getting reinvested in new council houses. It's going into the pockets of those individuals or those corporations. And that's a massive problem. So there's a drain there. So what is the government doing? It's borrowing more money in a way to cover the cost of the extra cost of that housing. So if landlords increase their rent, people are not able to afford it, they need to rely on support from the state. They need to get benefits from the state to cover those costs. And that money is not being reinvested in new infrastructure. It's going into the pockets of the owners. That's a massive problem. And this is part of the problem when it comes to the burden of taxation. So more and more tax is actually going into the private sector. Now, when it comes to investment, there are PFIs, there are private companies operating within the public sector who are milking it when it comes to investments. Those investments should be going to create infrastructure that eventually will be owned by the state, but instead part of that is going to the private sector. I'm not completely against using the private sector, but it has to be approached in the right way. And what's happened is, over the last number of decades, the government has been able to avoid borrowing a lot by creative bookkeeping, where they would put a lot of it into these PFIs and say, look, we're not actually borrowing a lot of money, but in reality, a lot of money is going into these private companies. And this is a problem. Ireland's ratio is 35 to 40%, and it means feck all. When there's no investment. Austerity got us down to that at the expenses of the public. PPPs used to be all over the place, being terrible value and quality. Boris didn't invest enough in Baroness Mo. Well said, Mr. Potato Head. Yeah, the problem here is a lot of money is going into the private sector, but also when it comes to borrowing, the borrowing must be there to invest in infrastructure. It needs to be there to invest in public services. If you're not doing that, then of course you're going to have a bad return for the public, and they're going to see debt as a massive problem, when in reality, debt isn't necessarily a problem. Private sector should be a stopgap when public services catch up. Nothing more. No, and unfortunately, the problem when it comes to West Streeting is he has basically said this, but the private sector have invested a lot in West Streeting, so we'll have to wait and see if he will rely on them to fill the gap and just that, or whether he will open up more of the NHS to the private sector, which is, when it comes to privatization, it's not that people will be going to private hospitals. It will be that the state will be providing people with healthcare, but they will be paying private companies to provide that healthcare. And that's a massive problem, because you get the impression that, well, the NHS has not changed. It's still a free at the point of use service, but you are paying for it in another way. So one of the ways that we keep hearing more and more about the budget, and one of these is one of these stories popping up is milkshake taxes. Have a listen to this, if it loads.
Obesity robs children of the best possible start in life, hits the poorest hardest, sets them up for a lifetime of health problems, and costs the NHS billions. So I can announce to the House we're expanding the soft drinks industry levy to include bottles and cartons of milkshakes, flavoured milk and milk substitute drinks. We're also reducing the threshold to 4.5 grams of sugar per 100 millilitres. Mr. Speaker, this government will not look away as children get unhealthier, and our political opponents urge us to leave them behind. Thank you.
Okay. I'm a huge advocate for making decisions at the top, but it's about just using a tax. I don't think is the right approach. What is this? Is that AI? Maybe it is. But I think the approach should be about providing alternatives. So forcing companies to provide alternatives, or providing alternatives for people. So this, we've seen it before. What does the government say? What we're going to do is going to put a tax on cigarettes. This will result in people smoking less. Has that worked? Not really. I think what's really forced people or convinced people to smoke less is better education, understanding the effects of smoking. I think this is much better approach. When it comes to fatty foods and stuff like this, generally the poorest people in society are eating these things because they're cheap. It's not because they're making bad choices. It's the only choice they have. If somebody is struggling to pay the bills, to buy food, and they go into the supermarket and they see, okay, fresh fruit and vegetables cost £5 or £6, while for £2.50 I can get a massive pre-cooked meal that I can stick in the microwave, and then everyone is fine for today. What are people going to do? And these pre-cooked meals, of course, are highly processed. They have a lot of sugar and salt and a lot of preservatives in them, and it's bad for public health, bad for people's health in general. Well, it'd be much better for them to cook the fruit and cook the vegetables and eat the fruit and focus on that. So it's when it comes to that, there is the issue of poverty, which is driving people to buy low quality food. But when it comes to other approaches, education is also necessary to educate people on how to produce meals. We don't need 30p Lee Anderson. We need somebody who's actually competent. And I think chefs like oh my God, I've forgotten his name. He done a show called The Naked Chef. I didn't watch it because he was naked. Was it Jamie Oliver? Jamie Oliver was wonderful when it came to educating people on how to make cheap, high quality, good quality, healthy food. And I think it'd be great to have somebody like Jamie Oliver brought on as a government consultant or something like that. He was used in the past. I don't know if he had some sort of major scandal and that's why he's not doing it anymore. But I know he had some businesses that didn't do very well. But I think it has to be a two-pronged approach. One is helping people by giving them more money so they have better options in life, that they don't have to go for the cheapest low-quality food because that's all they can go for. But also providing education to people. And I don't mean this in a condescending way. I mean about showing people different options are available, even on a shoestring budget. But I think the fundamental one, of course, is to provide people with more money. If you have more money, you have more options. Rich people have a lot of options, so they don't need to buy highly processed junk food. They can buy the better quality food. Let me read some of your comments, guys, because I blab and blab and blab, and I miss a lot of your comments, and they're really informative. And I mean that in a true way. Tax the air we breathe. High cigarette taxes enrich organized crime and paramilitaries. That's a valid point as well, Chatty Rat. Whilst I agree that they need to discourage rubbish nutrition, they should start running a free nutrition course teaching how to use and supplying fresh, possibly by expanding healthy start to older kids. Yes. When I was at high school, we did home economics, and I learned how to make pies. But that was about it. Pies and biscuits. Not exactly the way. I didn't study too much there, but you learned also things about how to make things for cleaning, without using chemicals and stuff like that, and things that you sort of assume that people already know. A lot of people don't know these things, and there's a lot of education that can be provided to children and young people that can set them up, to avoid a lot of problems in future. I'm poor, I eat well, but people are time poor, seeing what you get in the food bank. Seeing what you get in the food bank. Yeah, and I think that's a very valid point, Suzanne, that it's not just about not having the money, but also the time to do things. So if you're working two jobs, or if you're looking after a parent or an elderly relative or children, time can be a massive enemy. And it may be a case of, look, just stick something in the microwave because it's fast. Or if you're working a number of shifts, you don't have time to cook a meal, you don't have the time available. So, or if you're moving on the move, how many times do you see people eating something and running to the office or running to their workplace because they're doing extra hours or whatever just to make ends meet, and they don't have time to. It's not like in the south of France or in the Mediterranean countries where you have a longer lunch break. For example, for people who don't know, traditionally the lunch break in Italy was from 12 until 3. So from 12 until 3, most businesses closed. Now, it's changed a lot since then, but that was traditionally how things operated. So, and people still did the work. Many older people would go home and have a sleep for a bit during the day, a siesta in Spain, and then they would go back to work at around 3 o'clock. Now it's completely changed, but for many small businesses, they still operate like that, especially supermarkets. Max, please call a pro-Reform UK LBC commentator. Nick Ferrari, Nigel Farage's greatest friend. Threatening Nigel Farage with ham might get him pulled. Fair enough. Call threatening with a ham. Careful, 30p super square. 30p Lee super square will be popping up and offering cooking lessons, Max. Cooking with Lee. What would he be? What would Lee Anderson be cooking? You know, gruel. Gruel is actually quite nice, allegedly. There are different types of gruel. Beans on toast. Nick Ferrari has never gone hungry. You can tell. A 30p burger. I would not like to know what's in that. Gammon with chips. That's what Lee Anderson. Beans on toast. 30p patty Lee. Plain white rice or plain white pasta. Yes, I got the I got the point there. Let them eat cake, Max. Exactly. Brioche. There was a story here. Let me bring this up about the budget. So when it comes to fighting obesity and the issue of...
We begin with breaking news.
We'll just get to this in a moment. But when it comes to obesity and stuff like this, there needs to be a two-pronged approach. You need to provide people with better options. And of course, the most driving option people have is the lack of an option when they don't have enough money to buy stuff. And if people don't have enough money, they'll have to rely on what's available, you know, according to their budget, or as Suzanne has said, for example, at the food bank. There isn't a menu at the food bank. You go there and you get what's basically available. And it depends also when you go there. The Archies will be hardest hit by the sugar taxes. I was almost going to sing, Brad. Thanks for that super chat. I was almost going to sing, but then I held back because I realized, you know, people need internet. You know, there are people on life support who have machines that are linked up to the internet. So if I sang, I could put people's lives at risk.
From the Treasury, and ahead of our budget tomorrow, the Chancellor's just announced an increase to the national living wage and the national minimum.
The Speaker of the House is going to be very, very upset about this.
Minimum wage for next year. Let's bring in our chief political correspondent, John Craig. John, important rumours on juries in Crown Courts this afternoon. We'll talk to you about that in a moment. But tell us about these wage increases for some of the lowest paid workers.
These normally go up in the budget, but we've learnt the night before this time. Good news for young people in particular, for the numbers going up. Let me take you through the numbers. For the national living wage, first of all, that is going up by 4.1% to £12.71. That's for...
oh my goodness, people are going to be driving around throwing money out of their Rolls Royces after this massive increase in the national living wage.
People 21 years and over, it's a 50p increase. But here's the big one for the national minimum wage for 8.
How much do you think billionaires' incomes have increased generally over the last year? Do you think it's more than 50p?
18 to 20-year-olds, that is going up by a whopping 8.5% to £10.85, 85p increase. Government says that'll benefit them by £1,500 a year, £900 a year for the older people. And thirdly, for 16 and 17-year-olds and apprentices, the national minimum wage is going up by 6% to £8. That's a 40.
So you might be able to buy a pint in London. Wow. You know, an increase is better than nothing, but £25,000 per day for the rich. Don't spend it all at once. Hoy the chocolate teapot in human form. Yes. So I don't know if I prefer chocolate teapot to describe Lindsay Hoyle or chocolate fireguard. Which do you guys prefer, chocolate teapot or chocolate fireguard?
5p increase. Well, the Chancellor, making this announcement, has said this. She says, I know the cost of living is still the number one issue for working people and that the economy isn't working well enough for those on the lowest incomes. Too many people, she says, are still struggling to make ends meet, and that has to change. Well, note that the biggest increase is for those workers 18 to 20-year-olds. Speaking at the CBI this week, Kemi Badenoch was critical of the big increase for younger people, warning that it would deter employers from taking on younger workers.
Why would like if you have a business and you need workers, then why would you say, I'm not going to take them on because I'm going to have to pay them an extra 50p an hour, or I'm going to have to pay them an extra 30p an hour or £1 an hour or something like that. Like if you have a business and you need staff, you're going to pay decent wages. You should pay decent wages. I don't buy for a second that somebody would say, like, I'd love to expand my business, but I can't now because the minimum wage has increased slightly. It's like, what sort of business are you running? Like, are margins so tight that you couldn't pay a little bit extra? Like, are you living on the street, or are you living in your car just making ends meet, that your business isn't actually making a profit? No profit whatsoever, because 50p an hour extra would result in the business closing down or something.
John, we've had that drip feed of things like that ahead of the budget all week, but also now this talk of jury trials being, well, stopped for everything apart.
Well, so we'll get to that another time. So, guys, we're almost at the end of the stream, so I just want to say thank you to everyone who popped on tonight. Thank you for your support, and apologies for the beginning of the live stream where everything went a bit sort of pear-shaped, probably because I was singing, and that's Brad's fault. Brad's fault because it was his birthday. No, I'm joking. So I want to say thanks to everyone, including Brad, for coming on. I won't sing happy birthday again, I promise. Thanks to the moderators for doing a wonderful job. I won't be on the post-stream chat tonight. There won't be a post-stream chat tonight, but I hope to see you on Friday. Same bad time, same bad channel. Also, something I want to ask you guys is, I'm going to put a post on the community page. What guests would you like to see on the live stream? So I'm going to ask if there's anyone in particular you'd like me to invite on, and I'll see about reaching out to them. So before we go, we have our one for the road. So hope you enjoy this clip. And I will see you on Friday.
Are you a government that promised not to raise taxes or cut spending and just kind of hoped that nothing bad would happen in the meantime? Did you tie yourself up in fiscal restraints so tight that you now can't fiscally breathe? Are you all in for growth but all out of ideas and can barely acknowledge that Europe exists? Then you need tough choices. Just a few applications of tough choices will help you balance the books and make you look ruthless and decisive, the kind of bad boy that hero voters might like to choose. Want to find savings? Then take the tough choice to reduce money for disabled people. Need to buy more guns? Then take the tough choice to slash foreign aid. Don't want to raise taxes on the rich? Then take the tough choice to cut benefits instead. By making these tough choices, you'll show those special voters that you're not afraid to make difficult decisions by looking pained whilst doing the things they think you should be doing anyway. It's a win-win. But beware, sometimes an option might look like a tough choice, but it's actually just a bad idea. So, every time you make a decision that might hurt people, just think, do those people have money, power, or influence? Might you bump into them in a TV studio or a dinner party or a conference or your house? If so, then stop. That's not a tough choice. That's just a bad idea. But if those people are poorly or poorly understood, then you're on the right track. Making their lives harder is straightforward, which is what makes it a tough choice, and you'll look tough doing it, because you don't want to do it, which makes it a no-brainer. So remember, tough choices make you look tough. Bad ideas help nobody. Well, help nobody get re-elected. And after all, isn't that why you're in politics in the first place?
Wonderful, wonderful. So guys, I will see you on Friday, same bad time, same bad channel. Stay safe, take care, and good night.